This is a video overview of this knife, the ZT0801, and I'm Everyday Commentary, and thanks for tuning in. This knife is a collaboration between Zero Tolerance, which is a subsidiary of Kai USA, which also owns Kershaw, and a custom knife maker named Todd Rexford. Todd Rexford makes quite a number of really excellent knives. The three models that he usually sells are the Epicenter, which is produced as a collaboration with Boker, and the Amplitude, which is a smaller knife that was just released or announced for release at SHOT Show 2014. It's going to be part of the regular Kershaw line. And then he has this knife. This knife is very similar to Todd Rexford's Singularity. The other designs that he has, the collaborations, or the other knives he has for Kershaw, they don't have any ready comparisons to his collaborations, but I found that they were all pretty good, so I haven't had the Boker one. But this knife is an excellent larger EDC. In fact, I've used it outdoors, and I've used it to do fire prep and cutting like that. I've also used it to do regular everyday tasks, food prep, package opening, and it has excelled in all of those things. The LMAX steel, it runs LMAX steel, is actually quite good. I've had no complaints, and I know that some people do have complaints about the LMAX steel. The overall feel of the knife is really good in hand. You have plenty of real estate. I mean, I have medium-sized hands or medium-sized gloves, and you have plenty of hands. Nice full four-finger grip. It is a very heavy knife. Even though it has full titanium handle scales, it's still really heavy. And it's in part because you got a little, got a big thick chunk of blade steel there, and you got a big thick chunk of titanium. It uses the pocket clip from the Cryo, and I don't really care about pocket clips, but this one kind of sticks out to me, and it doesn't look good with the overall design. I'd much rather have a custom pocket clip or a specialized pocket clip. But this is one of the cheaper Zero Tolerances at $192, so I'm not gonna expect it to have all the bells and whistles of the more expensive models. I will note that this has some really obnoxious branding. And you can see right there, it has the Zero Tolerance label, which I don't really care. I mean, I don't care that it has it, but what it bothers me is that it's upside down. Like, very few people photograph the knife like this. I mean, it just looks upside down. So, whatever. I mean, that's like such a minor pet peeve, and it doesn't affect performance, so I don't care. In terms of flipping, the flipping is excellent. It runs on KVT captured bearing system, and you want to know how you know? Because you can see the captured bearing thing right there. I took this on a couple of hikes, and we got really, really dirty. We were basically sliding down the front of a small mountain, and so I was afraid that it was going to get gunked up, and it didn't. The bearing system handled it nicely. Now, I will let you know that this is not the smoothest bearing pivot I've ever had. It doesn't really gravity drop at all. But in terms of getting out, it gets out nice and quick with authority, no wrist flick required. And although the bearing pivot is visible, or the cage for the pivots, the cage for the bearings is visible, I don't know if that's a problem, and it hasn't been a problem for me. The other thing that this knife has is that it has a replaceable lock bar face. This allows the lock bar to wear in. When you have titanium up against steel, titanium is much softer than steel, especially hardened steel. And once the steel is heat treated and tempered properly, it's 10 to 20 points higher on the HRC scale, the hardness scale, Rockwell hardness scale, than titanium. And so eventually, over time, your lock will move as the titanium distorts to meet the steel, especially when it's placed under pressure. Here they actually have a steel insert that covers over the top part of the lock bar. I don't know if that's necessary. I think if you carbonize it or do a carbon deposit on the lock bar, it gives the titanium some extra wear resistance. And the knives that I have that don't have that, I've never really had a problem with the titanium lock bar going all the way over. I think that has a lot more to do with the blade geometry than any way you treat the face of the lock bar but either way, it's there, and so that just gives you a little bit extra confidence that there's not going to be any lockup problems. I will note that in using this hard, the lockup has moved over just a slight bit. And as you can see, it's still quite good. I mean, there's a lot of space left on the tang of that blade. It's really hard to photograph, but man, there's a lot of space left, so I'm not really worried about that at all, in fact. The one thing that I will say that I don't know if I like about this knife is when you close it, this knife has a very hard detent. And when you close it, there's a place where you have to push it past the detent to get the blade to close. And if you don't get your thumb out of the way, you can have a situation where the knife gets stuck right there. And it makes it hard to close it with one hand without like whacking the spine on material. You know, like if you're outside, you can just take it and like tap it on the ground, tap it on a tree or something, and it'll close it. But it doesn't make, you know, the thickness of the blade, the thickness of the handle, the width of the blade, where the flipper tab hits, and the fact that this is a really strong detent sometimes can get you in a stuck position, and then, you know, like it could slip open. I have had that happen actually when I was outdoors and I was doing something one-handed. I had to stop what I was doing in order to make sure I didn't cut my finger or something. I had to stop and take it, see, like just like that. That's what happened. It popped open, closed. So it's not a big deal, but it's one of those things that you would never know unless you use this knife, that there could be this issue. And I think that because it has to do with the detent, that there are so many variances in machining between batches and probably even between knives, that the detent ball in this one is just probably a little bit harder than the normal one. I don't think this is a flaw. I haven't seen anything like this, any complaints of this nature on the internet. And this knife has been out for a while, so if there were problems, they would have come up. This is actually the standard 801. There is a high-end version of the 801, and it has bronzed anodized titanium with carbon fiber, and then it has M390 steel. But I like this knife. It's a good knife. It's smaller than most ZTs. And look for a review of this knife, and you can get it at Blade HQ. This is a video overview of the ZT0801.